Felicia Cazares from Southside Community Church, and we thank you for joining us this morning for our Morning Glory. This week, it is our women's service, which we do every second Sunday of the month. So, today we're going to do something a little bit different. If I had to title this message, I would entitle it, Seize the Moment. Seize the Moment. You know, we don't always know when our moment is. There are times and seasons where we're just, tootling along and we need some help to figure out what moment we're in. For example, Mordecai had to tell his cousin, Esther, that perhaps this was her moment, that she was placed in the palace for such a time as this. We love that saying, that you're here for such a time as this. But she didn't know it. She didn't know that this was her moment, and someone had to point it out to her. Okay. Then as in another example, we see in the book of Ruth, where her mother-in-law had to tell her, hey, this is your moment. You're about to get married, because she didn't see the signs. But I'm going to talk today about someone who read the signs very well and decided to seize her moment. So today we're going to go to the book of Judges. And I'm in Judges 4. And just a little background. It was time for the commander of the Israeli army to go to war. And the prophet, Deborah, went to the leader, Barak, and she said, hey, isn't it time for you to go to war? And he was hesitant. He said, I'm not going unless you go with me. She says, okay, I'm going to go with you. But, and this is where the prophet in her came out. She says, the victory will not be yours. God will put it in the hand of a woman. Okay. Now, we go a little bit, and the battle begins. So Barak is chasing the army of the Canaanites, and we're going to pick up there. And this is verse 10, and it says, and Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh. He went up, and 10,000 men under his command, and Deborah went with him. Now Heber the Kenite of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, had separated himself from the Kenites and pitched his tent near the terebinth tree at Zaanaim, which is beside Kadesh. And they reported to Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera, that's the enemy, gathered together all his chariots, 9,000 chariots of iron, and all the people who were with him. From Haravosheth Hagoyim to the river Kishon. Then Deborah said to Barak, up, for this is the day in which the Lord has delivered Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone out before you? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men followed him. Okay, we skip down a couple of verses. Verse 16. Barak pursued the chariots of the army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not a man was left. Not one man. However, Sisera, that was the commander of the enemy army, had fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, which we just spoke about a few verses ago. For there was peace between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera. And she said to him, turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, do not fear. And when he had turned aside from her into the tent, she covered him with a blanket. Then he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I'm thirsty. She opened a jug of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him. Sounds so nice, isn't she? And he said to her, stand at the door of the tent, and if any man comes and inquires of you and says, is there a man here? You shall say no. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand and went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple. And he went down into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary, so he died. Okay, there's a lot going on here. So, first of all, we know that Heber separated from his group and went in between the Canaanites and the Israelites. He was like Switzerland. He's not taking sides. And it was because there was a relationship between his family, who was Moses' father-in-law, and the Israelites, because of Moses, that he was like neutral. He had peace with the enemy. He had peace with the Israelites. He was Switzerland. His wife, however, may not have liked that arrangement. We don't know anything about Heber the Kenite other than who his relatives were, because he's not in the story. Sisera, the commander of the enemy army, goes to his homestead, and his wife is there. And because he feels comfortable knowing, hey, this is Switzerland, I'm safe, that there's peace, and I can come here for refuge and for hospitality. Now, if you know anything about the Israelites during that time, hospitality was huge. It was a big deal to respect someone, to serve someone that comes to you. You offer them something to eat, to drink. You perhaps wash their feet. You serve them, which she did. She did. But when he had fallen asleep, she said, this is my moment. Now, think about this. The man that comes to your house for hospitality and refuge, because you know somebody's out to kill him, what do? When he falls asleep, do you tie him up and wait for them to come so they can take him away? What did she do? She took a tent peg and a hammer. She put that peg up to his temple, and she drove it in. Every time I think about that, I am amazed. I'm thinking, she could have smothered him she could have just, stabbed him, anything. But she took a tent peg and drove that through his skull. I'm amazed. Okay, now, how is this important? And why is this important? Because there are many times when you're not recognizing your moment, just the way Esther didn't understand the moment she was in, and she needed some guidance from her cousin. And just the way Ruth didn't recognize the moment that she was in, she needed guidance from her mother-in-law. But Jael, this woman, she knew exactly what she was going to do. When he came to her house, she couldn't refuse him hospitality because she is politically and positionally neutral. She couldn't treat him as the enemy because there was peace between her husband's household, her husband, and that commander's king. So politically, they were neutral. But there comes a time when political correctness has to go out the door. And I think that we are in a time and season when we're going to be faced with decisions as to our political correctness. Which side are we going to stand on? Now, I tell you, Jael made up her mind. She was nice about it. She waited till he fell asleep. And then she drove a tent peg through his skull. She put a full stop to political correctness. From that moment on, her husband cannot claim, hey, my name's Bennett, I'm not in it. No. She chose a side. She made that decision. She said, this is the moment. No longer will this household be Switzerland. We're going to choose, and we're going to choose to be on the Lord's side. Now, was she around when Deborah said, hey, I'll go with you, but this battle is going to be given to a woman. No, she wasn't there. She wasn't there when Deborah told that to the commander of the Israeli army. She didn't know that. But something in her knew that this was the moment. Now, we don't know if she also was a Kenite. We don't know that. We don't know what relationship she had to Israel or how she came to be Heber's wife. But I do know this. On that day, she made a decision from which there was no turning back. She stood up and said, I'm for Israel's army, and therefore, I'm on the Lord's side. Now, the whole world is in a time and a season where we have to make that decision. Now, what if, for example, someone else had come to her door instead of the captain of the Israeli army? What if somebody else had come to the door? What would she have done? Would her own life have been in jeopardy? Did she think about that? She made a decision, and it was permanent. It was final. So if you are in that, hey, I'm just Switzerland, live and let live, it's time to make a decision. It's time to seize the moment, make a decision, decide to be on the Lord's side, and live. So that's it for today. That's it for today. We thank you for joining us with Morning Glory this morning at Southside Community Church. Join us next week, which is Family Week, for Morning Glory. And join us next Sunday, 10 o'clock, for our Christmas special. We're having a wonderful Christmas special at 10. We have a world-class band, amazing, amazing praise and worship singers. And they're going to be performing a Christmas concert for us next Sunday at 10. Join us on sccnashville.org or on our Facebook group, on YouTube, at Southside Community Church. We're available to you in all those different media. We thank you, and join us today at 10. We have a guest speaker, Evangelist Mr. Maynard will join us at 10. Please join us for that. Thank you.